Chapter 1034. The Firebird star was a large light red star with a diameter of 27 million kilometers. Such a large star could be clearly seen even from hundreds of millions of kilometers away. The distance between the blue leaf and the Firebird star was only tens of thousands of kilometers. At a glance, the gigantic Firebird star filled one's line of sight. It was boundless. Besides the blue leaf, there were thousands of puppet battleships around it. Most of them were King-class battleships. There were small, medium, and large ones. Of course, there were also many Heavenly King battleships. There were at least one or two among the dozens of battleships. As for Emperor battleships, there was no need to think about them. The Firebird planet was just a small planet with life, so it was impossible for it to have an Emperor battleship. Begin decelerating. In the universe, there was very little resistance and friction. In the atmosphere, the resistance was very high. If they didn't decelerate, the entire blue leaf would burn up. After all, the Firebird planet was different from Elysium. In Elysium, once one's speed reached a certain level, they would directly enter the void. However, the space of the Firebird planet was the space of the universe. It was very stable. No matter how fast one was, it was impossible to enter the void. When one's speed reached a frightening level, the friction would be terrifying. In other words, regardless of whether it was a puppet battleship or a martial artist, they would not be able to increase their speed to the limit within the atmosphere of the Firebird planet. Even 1/10 of their speed would be enough. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Strong air currents assaulted the blue leaf, causing it to sway slightly. However, the blue leaf quickly adapted to the air currents of the Firebird planet and began to stabilize. Lon Exiner explained to Yi Chen, the Firebird planet has very little ocean. 90% of the planet is made up of land, and most of the land is unsuitable for human habitation, because earthquakes and volcanic eruptions often occur there. Only 30% of the land is suitable for human habitation. This 30% is divided into 3 continents. The largest is the Firebird continent, followed by the Flaming Wind continent, and then the Ironbone continent. My blue leaf family is located in the southeast of the Firebird continent. The Firebird planet seems to have a lot of metal mines. Through the hull of the blue leaf, Yi Chen's soul force radiated outwards. The ground below was filled with mines and miners. Every time a batch of ore was mined, a large puppet carriage would come forward to transport it. Everything was done in an orderly manner. Lon Exiner nodded. The Firebird star is a fire element star. Metal mines can be found on more than half of the continent. Every year, we have to transport a large amount of metal to other planets with life. Because of this, although the Firebird star is located at the edge, it is very lively. Tens of thousands of puppet battleships come and go. Most of them are here to buy metals. Of course, many of them are here to buy weapons. The weapon forging industry on the Firebird star is very prosperous. Every city has dozens of weapon forging shops. There are dozens of weapon forging shops in every city. Yi Chen could not help but be shocked. In Elysium, there were very few blacksmiths who could forge weapons. More than 99% of the weapons were passed down from ancient times. Yi Chen did not think that the weapons she was talking about were normal weapons. They were definitely weapons of the artifact level. Dozens of weapon forging shops in a city could not even be described as prosperous. Indeed, weapon forging is the main industry on the Firebird star, and weapon forging is only second to warriors. From low to high, they are low-rank blacksmiths, mid-rank blacksmiths, upper-rank blacksmiths, and the most noble extreme-rank blacksmiths. An extreme-rank blacksmith status is much higher than normal kings. Of course, to become an extreme-rank blacksmith, one has to be at least at the Sea of Souls realm. While the two were talking, the blue leaf began to land. This was a huge city in the southeastern part of the Firebird continent. The walls of the entire city were built with a special kind of stone. The surface of the walls gave off a faint glow, and it seemed to have a pretty good defensive power. In the center of the city was a huge square. Hundreds of puppet warships were parked neatly in the square. This is the battleship parking area of our blue leaf family. Since a lot of people use battleships for business, we park them here instead of putting them away. Of course, these are all King-class battleships. Sky King-class battleships would not be left outside casually. The cabin door opened, and a group of people walked down from the Blue Leaf. "Second young miss, you are finally back." In the plaza, a group of people with the Blue Leaf symbol on their clothes were already waiting. The leader seemed to be a housekeeper, but his cultivation was not low at all. He was at the first sky of life and death realm. Lon Exiner said, "Housekeeper Liu, how is my sister now?" "Still unconscious." Housekeeper Liu shook his head. Nodding, Lon Exiner said, "As long as it doesn't worsen, it's fine. I've already brought back the resurrection fruit. It can definitely cure sister." As she spoke, she turned around and looked at Yi Chen. "Mr. Yi? Why don't you stay in my Lon family for a few days? After I cure my sister, I can take you to tour the Firebird planet." "No need. I am used to being alone. In a strange place, it should be interesting to explore alone." "All right then." Although she had not spent a lot of time with Yi Chen, Lon Exayan knew that once Yi Chen made up his mind, he would not change it. "Go on with your business. I will take a stroll in this city first." Waving his hand, Yi Chen walked toward the nearest street. "Second young miss, who is he?" Housekeeper Liu saw that Lon Exayan seemed to care a lot about Yi Chen, so he asked. Lon Exiner said, "A very powerful sword artist. Let's not talk about this anymore. Take me to see my sister." "All right." Before leaving, Housekeeper Liu sized up Yi Chen's back. "A very powerful sword artist? Young Master Firebird, are you letting him go just like that?" A young king beside young Master Firebird said. "Then what do you want?" Yi Chen did not say anything even though he had suffered a loss once. A swordsman like him would not be a nameless nobody. Maybe he was a genius from another planet. At that time, there would be others to entertain him. As for me, as long as I enter the fourth layer, I will have more or less confidence. There will be no need for me to cause trouble. Young Master Firebird did not want to immediately regain his dignity, nor did he want to rely on his family's power. This was the rule of a life star. In a battle between geniuses, relying on family's power would be a joke. Interesting. Although he had already left, young Master Firebird's voice still reached Yi Chen's ears. This city was called Blue Leaf City, which belonged to the Blue Leaf family. It occupied a vast area, spanning 1,000 li. Just as Lon Exiner had said, the Firebird planet was indeed a star with a well-developed weapon forging industry. Basically, every main street had a weapon shop that specialized in selling all kinds of weapons. Blue Leaf City had more than 200 weapon shops. Of course, Blue Leaf City was a big city in the Firebird planet. Ordinary cities would have dozens of weapon shops. Arriving at a weapon shop with the Blue Leaf logo, Yi Chen entered. The weapon shop was very spacious with 5 floors in total. The first floor had the most of the low-grade artifacts, with all kinds of them. Just the low-grade artifacts on the counter alone numbered in the thousands. The second floor had mid-grade artifacts, while the third floor had upper-grade artifacts. The fourth floor had semi-extreme grade artifacts, and according to the staff, the fifth floor had pseudo-extreme grade artifacts and extreme grade artifacts. However, extreme grade artifacts were extremely rare, and most of the time, they were out of stock. Arriving at the fourth floor, Yi Chen checked the prices. The lowest price for a semi-extreme grade artifact is 1,000 extreme grade spirit stones, and the highest is 5,000. It seems very cheap. The fourth floor and below all used extreme grade spirit stones as the unit of measurement. 1,000 extreme grade spirit stones would be equivalent to 5 million upper grade spirit stones. In Elysium, 5 million upper grade spirit stones would not be enough to buy a semi-extreme grade artifact. Compared to upper grade artifacts, the price of a semi-extreme grade artifact would be dozens or even 100 times higher. You're right. Although Elysium is huge, it is still not bigger than the universe. Some of the materials that are rarely seen in Elysium might be very common in the universe. Plus, the weapon forging industry here is too developed, which leads to the weapons being of high quality and low price. On the fifth floor, the cheapest pseudo-extreme grade artifact costs 10 yuan stones. 10 yuan stones were equivalent to hundreds of thousands of extreme grade spirit stones. The most expensive one is 50. There were dozens of pseudo-extreme grade artifacts, which was not a small amount. Unfortunately, there were only a few extreme grade artifacts, not even one. They had probably all been sold. What is the price of an extreme grade artifact on the Firebird planet? Yi Chen asked the shop assistant on the 5th floor. The shop assistant was very observant. Hearing Yi Chen's question, he immediately knew that he was not from the Firebird planet. So he said, extreme grade artifacts are very rare no matter where you go. Low extreme grade artifacts cost around 200 to 300 yuan stones. Mid-extreme grade ones cost 500 to 700 yuan stones. And high extreme grade ones cost 1,000 to 1,500 yuan stones. Above that, there are Sky King grade artifacts that cost more than 2,000 yuan stones. In other words, I can buy a mid-extreme grade artifact with the money I paid on the blue leaf? Yi Chen already had a rough idea of the purchasing power of yuan stones. According to Lon Xiner, a large king grade battleship would cost more than 30,000 yuan stones. 10 of them would be 300,000 yuan stones. Even a normal Sky King grade battleship would cost 150,000 yuan stones. If I want to survive here, this amount of yuan stones is not enough. I have to think of other ways to earn more. Do you buy artifacts here? Yi Chen asked again. Of course. Coming to the counter, Yi Chen took out a pseudo-extreme grade sword and handed it to the shopkeeper. Good sword. It actually contains such a powerful destruction sword intent. The shopkeeper was shocked. How much? Normally, a pseudo-extreme grade artifact's price is between 10 to 50 yuan stones. This sword, I can give you 60 yuan stones. The shopkeeper said with a smile. All right. Yi Chen nodded. He did not really want to sell the sword. He just wanted to see if the sword he had made would be popular here. It seemed like it was not bad at all. Chapter 1035. With 60 source stones in hand, Yi Chen did not leave immediately. After thinking for a while, he pulled out the demon slaughtering sword from his waist. What about this sword? This is a top-quality high-level sword. The shopkeeper's eyesight was very sharp. With one glance, he could tell that this was an extremely rare top-quality high-level sword. Generally speaking, low-level top-quality swords were often sold in weapon shops and were considered expensive luxury goods. Middle-level top-quality swords would only be sold once every few months. And as for top-quality high-level swords, one might not even be seen in 3 to 5 years. Some weapon shops would open their entire lives without having a top-quality high-level sword for sale. But it's a pity. The shopkeeper suddenly shook his head. What's a pity? Yi Chen asked. The shopkeeper looked at Yi Chen. This sword's most precious material should be the crimson essence. But the person who forged it did not use the crimson essence's power to its limit, and it did not completely fuse with the other materials. I once saw a sword that contained the crimson essence, and that sword felt as if the spirit and flesh were one. This sword is still lacking a little, and correspondingly, that sword's grade was also higher than this one. It was a heavenly king grade sword. So that's how it is. Yi Chen nodded. In the entire Elysium, he was the only one who could forge top-quality swords, and it felt like he was building a car behind closed doors. On the other hand, on Firebird Planet, the weapon forging industry was unprecedentedly developed, and they naturally sought perfection. As if knowing that Yi Chen did not really want to sell this sword, the shopkeeper returned the demon slaughtering sword to Yi Chen and said, although the forging of this sword is lacking a little, the material is not bad, and it contains a powerful destruction sword intent. Its value far surpasses other top-quality high-level swords. I estimate it to be around 2,500 source stones. This was not a low price. Under normal circumstances, top-quality high-level treasures were worth between 1,000 to 1,500. So 2,500 source stones was equivalent to 2 top-quality high-level treasures. Leaving the weapon shop, Yi Chen walked towards the general store. He needed a map of Firebird Planet. Young master, our maps here are divided into many grades. The lowest is a paper map, and the highest is a star shrinking device. The general store shopkeeper introduced. Star shrinking device? Let me see. Yi Chen was a little curious. Wait a moment, young master. The shopkeeper walked into the room behind the counter. When he came out, he was holding a crystal ball in his hand. The crystal ball was fixed on a black square block of wood, sparkling and translucent. This is the star shrinking machine. Yi Chen sensed a mysterious fluctuation from it. That's right. Young master, you can inject a strand of your soul power into it, the shopkeeper said with a smile. All right. After nodding slightly, a strand of soul force emerged from between Yi Chen's eyebrows and silently entered the star shrinking device. In the next moment, an image appeared in Yi Chen's mind. It was the miniature of a pale red star, exactly the same as the Firebird star. As he concentrated, he discovered that this Firebird star could be enlarged. First, it was the Firebird continent, then the southeast part of the Firebird continent, then Blue Leaf City. Finally, the entire structure of Blue Leaf City was displayed clearly. He could even see the location of the street he was on. What a marvelous technique. Yi Chen sighed. The shopkeeper asked curiously, "What? Is this young master's first time seeing a star-shrinking device?" "That's right. My hometown is in a certain world, not a star with life," Yi Chen explained. Hee indeed. Star-shrinking devices can only be found on stars with life. The shopkeeper smiled, indicating that he understood. How much is this star-shrinking device? Yi Chen decided to buy it. The star-shrinking devices of the Firebird star are all 10 yuan stones. It's the same everywhere. Young master can rest assured. It's not that expensive. 10 yuan stones were equivalent to hundreds of thousands of supreme-grade spirit stones. For life and death kings, it was still acceptable. But for Sea of Soul realm experts, it was too expensive. Here. Handing over 10 yuan stones, Yi Chen put away the star-shrinking device. Excuse me, do you have any supreme-grade sword forging books, or books introducing supreme-grade metals? After solving the problem of the map, Yi Chen turned his attention to the sword forging art. His sword forging art had many flaws, and was not perfect. In fact, the sword forging art he had obtained in Gemstone Islands only touched upon a trace of supreme-grade sword forging art. Being able to forge supreme-grade swords was entirely due to Yi Chen's comprehension of sword Dao and powerful perception. If it were another sword-forging genius, it would be difficult to forge a pseudo-supreme-grade sword. Yes, but a lot. Moreover, the price is not cheap. The shopkeeper said, "I'll take as many as you have." Yi Chen's expression became spirited. Soon, the shopkeeper took out a small chest and opened it, revealing jade strips inside. Young master, these are all top-grade sword forging technique jade strips. After pouring your soul energy into them, the sword forging technique knowledge in the jade strips will enter your mind. After using it once, the jade strips will become useless. The function of jade strips was to prevent knowledge from leaking, just like profound sense martial skills. How much is one strip? 1 yuan stone. Do you mind if I look through a few first? Don't worry. I'll pay for the ones I've looked through. No problem. Taking out a jade strip, Yi Chen poured his soul power inside. Supreme Grade Fire Attribute Sword Forging Art. He took out another one. Supreme Grade Earth Attribute Sword Forging Art. Supreme Grade Water Attribute Sword Forging Art. Supreme Grade Metal Attribute Sword Forging Art. Supreme Grade Qinyang Sword Forging Art. Supreme Grade Extreme Yin Sword Forging Art. After reading through 7 or 8 jade scrolls in one breath, Yi Chen had a feeling of being enlightened. The sword forging knowledge inside was not very detailed. It was just the basics, and some parts were even unclear. If it were a normal top-rank sword forger, they would be completely lost. However, Yi Chen's understanding of the sword Dao had already reached an unimaginable level. Even the tiniest bit of extreme rank sword forging knowledge would be able to gradually improve him. Therefore, this extreme rank sword forging knowledge was undoubtedly a priceless treasure for him. All right, I'll take them all. A total of 24 yuan stones. The shopkeeper's face was full of smiles. To be honest, these top-grade sword forging technique jade strips weren't some kind of secret that couldn't be passed on to others. They were merely the most basic knowledge. If one thought that buying a top-grade sword forging technique jade strip would allow one to forge a top-grade treasured sword, that would be the ravings of a fool. It was like giving a peerless secret cultivation technique. Without the guidance of a master, one wouldn't know how to cultivate. Everything had to be supported by the details. True supreme-grade sword forging art wasn't for sale. Those famous sword forging masters wouldn't pass down their secret sword forging art to others. Even when they taught their disciples, they would only pass down a bit of it from time to time. Unless the disciple was their direct disciple, the majority of the disciples wouldn't be able to learn it. Naturally, the shopkeeper was happy to sell a set of supreme-grade sword forging art. Gongzi, you've taken care of quite a lot of my business this time. I'll give you this set of books introducing metal materials. The shopkeeper took out a huge box and placed it in front of Yi Chen. Supreme Grade Metal Material Introduction. Supreme Grade Metal Material Introduction. Supreme Grade Metal Material Introduction. Just like the Supreme Grade Sword Forging Art, the books on Supreme Grade Metal Material Introduction were categorized into different categories. Many thanks. Yi Chen accepted it without hesitation. Compared to the other items he had bought, these books weren't worth much. Otherwise, the shopkeeper wouldn't be so generous as to give him a set. In the blink of an eye, a week had passed. Yi Chen had not only digested the knowledge of 24 supreme grade sword forging art, but he had also finished reading all the books introducing metal materials. It's time to purchase some supreme grade sword forging art. Forging swords could strengthen Yi Chen's foundation. The reason why Yi Chen's sword Dao could advance by leaps and bounds was due to the countless swords he had forged. There were many things that one could comprehend by analogy, and the same went for sword forging. After all, it wasn't easy to comprehend martial arts and profoundness. By the end of the day, Yi Chen had purchased a large amount of supreme-grade sword forging art. Just the most common star iron alone cost Yi Chen tens of millions of jin. Of course, although it looked heavy, it was only the size of a small fake mountain. Supreme-grade sword forging art was extremely mysterious. Although it didn't look big, a piece of metal the size of a fist weighed thousands of jin. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to forge a supreme-grade sword forging art that could change its size at will. It's a pity that I don't have enough primal stones. Yi Chen had spent more than half of the primal stones he had. Fortunately, the supreme-grade sword forging art was enough for him to forge hundreds of supreme-grade sword forging art. Even if they were all inferior supreme-grade sword forging art, they would still be worth 200,000 to 300,000 primal stones. However, Yi Chen knew that this was only in theory. With Yi Chen's current experience of forging one supreme-grade sword forging art, it would be good if he had a 10% success rate. If it was someone else, they probably wouldn't even have a 1% success rate. No matter what they did, they would have to pay the tuition fee first. This was also the reason why there were very few solitary supreme-grade sword forgers. Out of 100, there would only be 1 or 2. Most of the supreme-grade sword forgers had the support of super families and sections. Normal families and sects wouldn't have so many primal stones to spend. The price of raising a supreme-grade sword forger was very shocking. Without primal stones, even if you were a peerless genius, you would still have to stand aside. Correspondingly, on the Firebird planet, those with supreme-grade sword forging art would have a very prestigious status, much higher than normal kings. Many powerful kings would fight to send gifts to them, begging them to forge supreme-grade sword forging art. Looks like I should sell the 10 demons battleships. I can't use them anyway. The demons battleships were very valuable, and it would be too wasteful to keep them. Once they were used, the upper echelons of the demons might notice them. Maybe I can sell them to her. Yi Chen thought of Lan Xiner. Chapter 1036. In the center of Blue Leaf City, there was a manor that looked like a small city. The manor was divided into 5 parts: east, west, south, and center. 2 young women were sparring in the training field of the southern manor. Of these 2 women, one was Lan Xiner, and the other looked a bit like Lan Xiner. However, her face was more angular, and she looked very cold. This was Lan Xiner's older sister, Lan Xiner. She was ranked second among Planet Firebird's 10 heroes. Ding ding ding. The sound of swords clashing rang out incessantly. Sparks flew everywhere, and when the aftershocks spread out, mysterious ripples appeared around the martial arts field. These ripples had the effect of absorbing the aftershocks, so although the fight between the 2 seemed to be extremely intense, the damage caused was rather limited. Sister, be careful. Illusion. A blue misty rain burst out and enveloped Lan Xiner. With a flick of her wrist, the light blue sword in Lan Xiner's hand was like a flowing spring. It merged with the blue misty rain and attacked Lan Xiner. Lan Xiner had a hard time dealing with the previous illusory heart. The only reason she was able to do so was because Lan Xiner's swordplay wasn't very proficient. She hadn't reached the stage where her heart and sword were connected. Even so, Lan Xiner was shocked. 5 years ago, in terms of swordplay, Lan Xiner was much weaker than her. She even helped her modify the illusory heart. Could it be that Lan Xiner had improved so much in the past 5 years that her swordplay was catching up to her? The illusory heart's suppression on her was too great. Once the illusory heart appeared, Lan Xiner could no longer reverse the situation. However, at that moment a powerful sword force exploded from her body. She used force to break Lan Xiner's sword light. Hee sister, the power you used just now was more than mine. Lan Xiner smiled. When they sparred, they always used the same amount of power. It was just swordsmanship. You win this time. Lan Xiner let out a breath of turbid air and smiled. Putting away her sword, Lan Xiner said, I'm satisfied to be able to beat you by one move. Next time, let's have a proper spar. The so-called sparring was to test each other's sword techniques. Lan Xiner didn't think that her sister would lose to her in a real fight. Her opponent could easily disrupt her sword techniques in the middle of the fight, instead of allowing her to use them freely. Okay. Lan Xiner nodded and asked curiously, Is this the result of your 5 years? No, on the way back a powerful swordsman taught me. Although we've only been together for a dozen days, I feel that my understanding of sword skills has deepened. Lan Xiner thought of Yi Chun. A powerful swordsman. Could he be an elder? Lan Xiner subconsciously thought that the person teaching her was a famous swordsman with a lot of seniority. This kind of thing happened often. Some seniors would occasionally teach young people they liked, and even take them in as disciples. Prince Jinghong, who was ranked first among Planet Firebird's 10 heroes, was taken in as a disciple by an emperor-class swordsman. Big sister, guessed wrong again. The one who taught me was a young swordsman. He looked even younger than me, probably only 36 or 37 years old. Lan Xiner seemed to enjoy seeing her sister being defeated. She blinked her eyes. A 36 or 37-year-old swordsman taught you? Lan Xiner was really shocked. 36 or 37 years old was indeed too young for their realm. Planet Firebird's 10 heroes were all over 40 years old. Don't underestimate this gap of 3 or 4 years. It was very likely that their strength had increased tenfold. It seemed that only those geniuses on the Heavenly King list could be this powerful at this age. Lan Xiner couldn't help but be extremely curious about the young swordsman her sister spoke of. Tell me about him, Yi Zichen said. Lan Xiner said. Okay. Lan Xiner didn't keep her in suspense. She told her everything that had happened to Yi Chun on the blue leaf. When she talked about how Yi Chun had defeated Yi Chun in one move, a strange light flashed in Lan Xiner's eyes. According to her sister's description, she guessed that Yi Chun had used the vibration sword art. However, being able to knock away Yi Chun's sword and shatter his arm without using true yuan meant that the other's research on the power of vibration had reached a terrifying level. You're saying that you only used the illusion sword art once, and he already pointed out the flaw and modified it? Lan Xiner couldn't help but blurt out. Lan Xiner nodded. That's right. At that time, his suggestion was the same as yours. But when I told him that the modified illusion heart and illusion dream couldn't be combined, he immediately raised his opinion. He said that your modification wasn't thorough enough and didn't get to the point. In the next 10 days, a new illusion heart appeared. Amazing. I really want to meet him. An intense battle intent surged in Lan Xiner's eyes. As a sword artist, there was no one who didn't want to fight against a powerful sword artist. She had fought against Graceful Prince dozens of times, but the latter had an emperor-grade sword artist guiding him. She was not his opponent at all. Moreover, Graceful Prince's cultivation base was also higher than hers, having reached the 5th layer of life and death realm. He occupied a spot on the Heavenly King list, although his ranking was quite low. I also want to meet him. The illusion heart has been modified, but the illusion dream has not. Only after these two moves are modified will I be able to see the true essence of this mysterious sword art. Lan Xiner sighed. Second lady, there's a young sword artist outside looking for you. He asked me to inform you. Suddenly, a guard ran in and said loudly, Young sword artist? Is it young Master Yi? Lan Xiner's eyes brightened as she said, Is he wearing blue clothes? Yes. The guard nodded. Bring him here quickly. Soon, Yi Chen arrived under the guard's lead. Young Master Yi. Lan Xiner went up to greet him. Lady Xiner, Yi Chen is here to visit. I hope I didn't disturb you. Yi Chen had a smile on his face. While speaking, he sized up the elegant lady beside Lan Xiner. And this is? This is my sister Lan Xiner. Sister, he is the Yi Chen I mentioned. Lan Xiner introduced the two. I'm Yi Chen. Nice to meet you. Yi Chen nodded. Lan Xiner, I've heard about you from Xire. Thank you for helping her modify her sword art. Lan Xiner nodded and sized up Yi Chen. Yi Chen, dressed in blue and carrying a sword, gave people a quiet and slightly mysterious feeling. There was no sword aura on his body, but it was impossible to ignore. It seemed that he could cut the sky and earth with a wave of his sleeve and walk freely in the starry sky. Of course, this was purely Lan Xiner's subconscious feeling. Ordinary swordsmen couldn't sense this. Lady Xiner is talented and intelligent. I just gave her some pointers. Yi Chen could see that Lan Xiner was more than 10 times stronger than Lan Xiner. Whether it was sword aura, sword essence or aura, they were all much stronger. Young Master Yi, this way please. I'll make you some tea. On the small lake next to the training field, there was a pavilion. Lan Xiner invited Yi Chen to the pavilion. Taking a sip of tea, Yi Chen said directly, Lady Xiner, I came here this time to ask you for a favor. If you think it's too troublesome, then don't force yourself. What is it? As long as I can do it, I will definitely agree. Lan Xiner asked. Can you help me sell these demons' battleships? Yi Chen took out a demon's battleship from his storage ring. It was 700 to 800 meters long and floated above the lake. Large puppet battleships. They belonged to the demons. Lan Xiner couldn't help but say. Indeed, I took this demon's battleship from the demons. However, the aura on it is too obvious, and it could easily attract the attention of the demons. So I want to sell it. Lan Xiner laughed. It's a piece of cake. We humans and the demons have always been enemies. Getting their demons' battleships is normal. These demons' battleships can be modified to remove the demonic aura on them, so the demons won't be able to recognize them. You said that there are more of them? 9 more. Yi Chen nodded. Hiss. Lan Xiner and Lan Xiner exchanged a look. Taking 10 large demons' battleships in one go was not an easy task. Usually, when the large demons' battleships appeared, the demon army would definitely appear. There would be a lot of demon kings inside. So, how did they get 10 demons' battleships? Of course, they wouldn't get to the bottom of this. This was someone else's secret. These demons' battleships are large king-class battleships. Their price is between 30 to 50,000, but not lower than 30,000. I can only give you 300,000 primeval stones for 10 of them. I'll give you the rest after I sell them. Lan Xiner said. No problem. He was already very satisfied that she was willing to help him with this. Where can I buy a Heavenly King-class battleship? Yi Chen asked again. Lan Xiner answered for Lan Xiner. The Flaming Bird continent has 3 main cities. Only the main cities have Heavenly King-class battleships for auction. As far as I know, in 3 months, Flaming City will hold a large-scale auction. At that time, there will definitely be a Heavenly King-class battleship. Flaming City. Yi Chen had already memorized the names of all the cities on the Flaming Bird planet. Flaming City was more than 3 million miles away from Lanya City. Next, Yi Chen handed the 10 demons' battleships to Lan Xiner. Lan Xiner withdrew 300,000 primeval stones from the Lanya family and gave it to Yi Chen. Young Master Yi, I'm very interested in your sword skills. I wonder if I can spar with Xiner? After the business was done, Lan Xiner asked Yi Chen for a spar. Alright. Yi Chen was very straightforward. After all, Lan Xiner had only helped him once. No matter what, he had to give her sister some face. This way, please. Lan Xiner didn't expect Yi Chen to be so straightforward. He gestured with his hand. When they arrived at the training field, Yi Chen and Lan Xiner stood dozens of meters apart. As for Lan Xiner, she stood far away, holding her breath. I wonder how intense this spar will be. Please. Lan Xiner pulled out her red sword. Her eyes sharpened. Even from a distance, Lan Xiner felt a prickling sensation on her skin. She had experienced her sister's strength more than once or twice. Chapter 1037. Go all out. Yi Chen did not pull out the demon-slaying sword. He merely stood there, and a faintly discernible sword aura locked onto Lan Xiner. It was different from other people's sword aura. Yi Chen's sword aura contained softness within hardness and hardness within softness. Under the lock of this sword aura, Lan Xiner felt a subtle sense of fear for the first time, and her hair stood on end. What level of sword aura is this? Lan Xiner knew that if she did not make a move now, she would not have the courage to do so. Yi Chen's strength was beyond her imagination. The Yi Chen that her sister Lan Xiner spoke of was not as strong as the Yi Chen in front of her. No, it was not even half as strong. Facing Yi Chen, she felt that she was full of flaws and was full of danger. When God leaves, Lan Xiner immediately used her ultimate move. Her figure flashed, and a blazing red light slashed out. This red light seemed overbearing, but in reality, it was extremely agile and ethereal. It was like a fallen leaf in the autumn wind. Any breeze could change its trajectory, making it difficult for the opponent to guard against it. Good move, but it's better to be more pure. With a ding sound, sparks flew everywhere. Yi Chen blocked the sword. Hurricane Divine Fire. Using the power of Yi Chen's sword, Lan Xiner's body shot up into the sky. In the next moment, she swooped down in an even more ferocious manner. Her red sword swept out, and a strong scarlet hurricane swept across the world. It was powerful, but if one really thought that this move was overbearing and rough, they would be wrong. Yi Chen clearly felt that the scorching hurricane sword aura contained countless vortexes. They grew and multiplied endlessly, advancing wave after wave. Once one fell into this hurricane sword aura, they could only passively take a beating, as if they were trapped in a swamp. Good move. Yi Chen didn't retreat, but advanced instead. His figure flickered, directly cutting into the hurricane sword chi. However, what made Lan Xiner alarmed was that Yi Chen's figure was like a ghost that didn't seem like a human's body. There was no gap in between, and he forcibly passed through. As he passed through, the hurricane sword chi was like a wave that had been split apart, spraying to the sides. Ding! Metal and iron clashed, and the red sword in Lan Xier's hand flew out of her hand. Then, Yi Chen's sword was pointed at the space between her eyebrows. It was clean and efficient, without any hesitation. Lan Xiner, who was watching from the side, was dumbfounded. Her sister had been defeated without any suspense. Compared to her sister's sword technique, Yi Chen hadn't used any powerful sword technique at all. He seemed to have completely seen through her sister's sword technique's flaw, and then magnified it to the limit. Lan Xier's expression changed several times as her treasured sword was knocked away. Clang! Sheathing the Demon Slayer sword, Yi Chen said, "There are actually no flaws in your sword technique. However, in the end, everything has to be simplified. You should develop in the direction of simplicity, and not rigidly adhere to the form. Once you achieve the goal of simplifying and returning to complexity, you will have new insights." There was no difference between complexity and simplicity. One was acquired, and the other was innate. They were used to verify each other. When your sword technique was incomparably simple, it could move towards complexity and change. When it reached the limit of complexity, it could become simple, and then continue to be complex. It was an endless cycle, with almost no end. Of course, the further you went, the more difficult it would be, and the more powerful it would be. Destroying the world, and creating the world would only take a single thought. Please guide me on my sword technique. Out of the expectations of Yi Chen and Lan Xiner, Lan Xiner suddenly bent down and begged Yi Chen for guidance. She was not her sister, Lan Xiner. After sparring with Yi Chen, she knew how terrifying Yi Chen was. Perhaps in the previous exchange, he had only revealed a trace of his ability. The killer move, Hurricane God Fire, was invulnerable in her eyes. Even Prince Jinghong had to rely on absolute strength and speed to break it. However, in the eyes of Yi Chen, it was so fragile that it could not withstand a single blow. The mysterious swordsman in front of her had completely conquered Lan Xianer's heart. She knew that if she did not ask Yi Chen for guidance today, she would regret it for the rest of her life. Sister, Lan Xian, had just recovered from the shock, and her expression immediately froze. In her impression, her sister was a person who looked tough on the outside, but was soft on the inside. She was swift and decisive, sometimes very stubborn, and very opinionated. She had never thought that her sister would throw away her pride and ask Yi Chen for guidance. Yi Chen smiled bitterly. The other party's action had stunned him for a moment. Forget it. It doesn't matter if it's one less or one more. Does your Lanya family have a place for forging swords? Yi Chen did not reply directly. Yes. Our Lanya family is a family of swordsmiths. We have dozens of swordsmithing courtyards. I will arrange the best one for you, Lan Xianer said. Thank you. During this period, if I have time, I will come here to give you some pointers. Yi Chen could not waste his time on the two of them. He could only occasionally give them pointers. You agree? Lan Xianer's face lit up. The swordsmithing courtyard that Lan Xianer arranged for Yi Chen was one of the 3 great courtyards of the Lanya family, the Earthfire Courtyard. Of course, the courtyard was mainly used for resting. The place for forging swords was 1,000 meters below the courtyard. The Firebird star was a fire-attributed star. The temperature and purity of the earth fire were very high. After being processed by the flame gathering array, the flame amplification array, the flame purification array, and the flame condensation array, the flames produced were as red as blood. They could melt almost any top-grade metal without any effort. Ding ding dang dang. Having found a suitable place, Yi Chen started to forge the great sword day and night, without sleeping or resting. However, Yi Chen did not just casually forge top-grade swords. He planned to start with top-grade swords of the metal and water elements. Because he had already perfected the metal and water profound, the success rate should be much higher. The higher the success rate, the more profit he would make after recovering his costs. In the blink of an eye, half a month passed. Yi Chen walked out of the scorching hot ground. What made him dumbfounded was that Lan Xian, and Lan Xian, were sitting on the grass in the courtyard. From their posture, it seemed like they had been sitting there for many days. What are you doing? Yi Chen said helplessly. Lan Xian said seriously. Waiting for young Master Yi to come out. When I come out, I will inform you. There is no need to waste a lot of time here, Lan Xian said. If we don't even have this little bit of patience, we are not worthy of young Master Yi's pointers. As for wasting time, I don't think so. Waiting will make our hearts more peaceful. It is not like we will not gain anything. Then let's begin. Miss Xianer, let's start with you. Yi Chen promised to help Lan Xianer modify the dream. Okay. Lan Xianer nodded excitedly. This modification took 3 days. This was not because the modification of the dream was difficult, but because Lan Xian could not understand Yi Chen's modification. Fortunately, Lan Xian had been training with her. After 3 days, Lan Xian gradually mastered the new dream and improved significantly. When it came to Lan Xian, Yi Chen did not help her modify the sword moves. The other party's sword moves were self-created and could not compare to the ancient sword techniques that Lan Xian had obtained from the mysterious mystic realm. No matter how good the modification was, it would only treat the symptoms and not the root cause. If the modification was too good, it would become Yi Chen's sword moves and not Lan Xianer's. Therefore, Yi Chen only pointed at Lan Xianer's weak points. For example, the most basic swordsmanship. Do not underestimate the basic swordsmanship. Any powerful swordsmanship was made up of the basic swordsmanship. It was just like the entire world was made up of energy particles. The better the basic swordsmanship, the better the foundation. It was like a skyscraper. If the foundation was not solid, the skyscraper would have safety problems. It could not be built higher or stronger. Before entering the sword world, Yi Chen's basic swordsmanship had already reached perfection. No one in Elysium could compare to him. After entering the sword world and seeing countless kinds of swordsmanship, Yi Chen's basic swordsmanship had reached the pinnacle. It was not an exaggeration to say that even the swordsmanship of the Snow Sword of Gojoseon and the Star Sword King was very immature in Yi Chen's eyes. At the beginning, Lan Xian did not think much of Yi Chen's pointers. She thought that he was looking down on her. But after one day, Lan Xian was completely convinced. The ordinary basic swordsmanship in Yi Chen's hands was like a god. It was to the point of turning something rotten into something magical. For example, when she did not use any true yuan, will or sword power, a simple stab was 10 times stronger than hers. It was clearly the same amount of power. Basic swordsmanship can allow you to truly understand the way of the sword and understand how to control the sword energy. Don't think that comprehending the profoundness is everything. In fact, profoundness is also a way of using power. Before forging the sword, Yi Chen said a sentence that was easy to understand to Lan Xian. As for how much she understood, that was not something he could control. Sister, what do you think young Master Yi's background is? Why do I feel like he knows everything? There are no secrets in his eyes. Looking at Yi Chen's back, Lan Xian came over. Lan Xian said, there are countless geniuses in the universe, like stars in the sky. There are also many geniuses of the way of the sword. There will always be a few geniuses who walk in front of everyone else and understand mysteries that others do not. Young Master Yi is one of them. Time flowed like water. There was no turning back. It was already the last few days of the 3rd month. In the depths of the Earthfire courtyard. In 3 months, I've scrapped 4 swords and forged 2 defective ones. However, I've also succeeded in forging 2 swords. 2 swords floated in front of Yi Chen. One was gold with a tinge of blue, filled with a masculine golden aura. The other was blue with a tinge of ink. The body of the sword seemed to contain a vast ocean. When forging a supreme-grade treasure sword, even a supreme-grade swordsmith's success rate was not very high. A 50% success rate was already a top supreme-grade swordsmith. A 30% success rate was a rather famous supreme-grade swordsmith. Although Yi Chen's talent in sword forging was not inferior to his comprehension of the way of the sword, his foundation was still shallow. His success rate was only above 10%. The treasure sword with a tinge of gold with a tinge of blue was a metal attribute sword. It was a low-grade supreme-grade sword. Yi Chen had named it Star Cutter, meaning that it was unstoppable and tyrannical. The sword with a tinge of ink with a tinge of blue was a water attribute sword. It had reached the mid-grade supreme grade. Its name was Vast Ocean. The sword's power was vast and endless. Chapter 1038. On the ground, Lan Xian and Lan Xian were both practicing their swordsmanship. Sir Yi. Seeing Yi Chen come out, the two stopped. You've both improved a lot in the past 3 months. Miss Xian, your swordsmanship is more decisive than before, and your sword intent will break through to level 7 soon. Miss Xian, your basic swordsmanship is improving every day. If you have another 3 months, you should be able to reach a higher level. Next, you'll have to rely on your own hard work. Relying on others can only last for a while. Yi Chen's eyes were as gentle as water. He swept his gaze over the two, as if all their secrets were no longer secrets to him. Sir Yi, are you going to Fire City? Lan Xian asked. I've been on the Firebird planet for a while now. It's time to look around. I hope to see a new you the next time we meet. Goodbye. After saying this, Yi Chen directly rose into the sky and flew out of the city. He really left just like that. Lan Xian pursed her lips. Don't worry. The next time we meet, I, Lan Xian, will improve to a level that will shock you. Lan Xian murmured with a determined look. The greater the pressure, the greater the improvement. The pressure on a planet with life is still too small. In the sky outside the city, Yi Chen thought to himself. Lan Xian and Lan Xian's talent was not much weaker than Elysium's Duguju and the others. However, in the same realm, their battle strength was barely satisfactory. In Elysium, the alien race's calamity was everyone's nightmare. In order to survive the calamity and defeat the invasion of the demons and the evil spirit race, everyone was desperately evolving. This kind of humiliation and pressure made them continuously become stronger and break through their limits. Swoosh! His protective true yuan rubbed against the atmosphere, as Yichen flashed into the sky like a spark. Yuanqing, have you heard? 3 months ago, the rising sun sword king Yu Chen was defeated by a mysterious swordsman on the blue leaf. It said that he was defeated with one sword. The light red sky was as brilliant as fire. 2 figures flew side by side, their speed exceeding 1,000 times the speed of sound. The one who spoke was a young man on the left, with a shallow scar on his cheek. That's right. Although Yu Chen is a bit weaker than us, and can't be ranked among the Firebird planet's 10 heroes, he is not a pushover. Defeating him with one sword strike is not an easy task. The bald youth on the right nodded. I'm not surprised that Yu Chen was defeated. What I'm concerned about is why young Master Firebird didn't make a move. Could it be that he's afraid of trouble? That makes sense. Don't be arrogant. However, that is just his appearance. Otherwise, he wouldn't be ranked above the 2 of us, said the scarred youngster with a smile. If there was a knowledgeable person here, they would definitely recognize these 2 youths as Luo Yingkong and Yuanqing, who were ranked 6th and 8th among the Firebird planet's 10 heroes. Although Luo Yingkong's strength was only ranked 6th, his Qinggong was only below young Master Jinghong's, and Yuanqing's hammer technique was exceptionally domineering. He was known as the Shattered Star King, perhaps young Master Firebird. One day I will defeat him. Clenching his fists, Yuanqing said. Hee, we can talk about the future in the future. Let's speed up. This time, the Fire City's ranking meeting was actually held 3 days in advance. Luckily, we got the news early. Luo Yingkong smiled and increased his speed. Indeed, on the Firebird planet, one's speed can only be increased to 1% without any resistance. The starfire continued to increase its speed, its outer layer burning with pure flames. In Elysium, once one's speed reached a certain level, one would be able to escape into the void, and the friction with the air would not be as strong. However, on the Firebird planet, no matter how fast one's speed was, one would not be able to escape into the void. This led to the higher one's speed, the greater the friction. Every time one increased their speed, the pressure they had to bear would multiply, and the consumption of Zhen Yuan would also multiply. The speed gradually slowed down, maintaining a speed of 1,500 times the speed of sound. Yichen did not want to waste too much Zhen Yuan. He could fight with people for 3 days and 3 nights, or even 7 days and nights. However, he had a feeling that if he kept increasing his speed, his Zhen Yuan would be exhausted within 2 hours. This was an extremely frightening consumption rate, and it was also the law of the universe. The faster one's speed was, the more kinetic energy they would need. Even if he was proficient in the space profound, he could only slow down this rate. Fire City was one of the 3 main cities of the Firebird continent. It was different from the other cities. Flying was prohibited in the sky above Fire City, and everyone had to enter the city through the main gate. This was because the city lord of this city was the Leaf Flame Mystic Emperor. In the universe, if one wanted to become an emperor, their cultivation base had to be at the 7th sky of life and death realm, and the Leaf Flame Mystic Emperor was a 7th sky of life and death realm warrior. On the street outside the east gate of Fire City, there were countless figures of people. The number of people could not be counted. We're finally here. Luo Yingkong and Yuanqing landed on the street and walked toward the east gate. Suddenly, the 2 raised their heads at the same time, looking at the sky. That is, swoosh. A tall figure descended. His figure was extremely heavy, giving off the feeling of a mountain or a vast ocean. However, when he landed on the ground, he felt as light as a feather, landing without a sound. It was as if the weight of his body had disappeared, and it was just an illusion. As this person landed, the surrounding noise disappeared completely, replaced by a deathly stillness. The people in the vicinity felt as if their bodies had gone numb, unable to move. Even moving a finger was difficult. Their eyes fixated on the descending figure as cold sweat dripped down their foreheads. What a frightening blade qi! Luo Yingkong and Yuanqing's pupils dilated as they remained motionless. The person who came was very young. He looked to be in his 20s. His appearance was cold and extraordinary, He had a head of wild black hair. His eyebrows were like knives, and his eyes were like knives. His fluttering clothes gave people a kind of domineering sharpness when he drew his knife. His figure was tall and straight. He was more than 2 meters tall. Standing there, he was like a saber that could support heaven and earth. Lifeless blade artist Lung Fifan. Luo Yingkong uttered these words with great difficulty. Crack. All of a sudden, Luo Yingkong's entire body seemed to have been electrocuted. His heart stopped beating, his blood stopped flowing, and his eyes became sluggish. All of this was caused by a casual glance from Lung Fifan. Too powerful. Is this the lifeless blade artist Lung Fifan from the king list? In the distance, many people looked over. Lifeless blade artist Lung Fifan came from the giant blade star. He was 44 years old this year, and was at the 4th sky of life and death realm, ranked 7th on the heavenly king list. He was a horrifying genius with a peerless talent for blade Dao. His blade arts were said to have reached the level of lifeless and deathless. Under one blade strike, even ghosts and gods would find it hard to escape. As for the king list, it was a monster list. In order to enter this list, one had to be under 50 years old and be a genius among geniuses. This list only had 100 spots. Anyone on the list had an extremely frightening strength. Among the 10 heroes of the Firebird Star, only the first-ranked Jinghong Prince had entered the list. However, even with his cultivation base at the 5th sky of life and death realm, he was only ranked 94, completely incomparable to Lung Fifan. Lung Fifan had once been praised by an expert who had surpassed the 7th sky of life and death realm, saying that he was one of the geniuses who had the highest hope of reaching the peak of Blade Dao. Therefore, everyone recognized that within the same realm, Lung Fifan was almost invincible. Even the top 6 monstrous geniuses on the king list could only suppress him with their cultivation base. Such a frightening blade artist had actually come to the Firebird Star, to the Fire City. Could it be that there was something he wanted in the auction? Just as Lung Fifan was about to step toward the east gate, another figure flew over from the sky. Swish! The figure landed on the ground. It was a young man in blue robes with a long sword hanging on his waist. His long, elegant hair was as black as ink, without a trace of dust. It was Yi Chen. This guy dares to land next to Lung Fifan? He's really not afraid of death. Everyone was alarmed to find that Yi Chen had no intention of avoiding Lung Fifan. He directly landed beside the ladder, and the distance between the two was no more than 10 meters. However, Yi Chen's arrival also startled Luo Yingkong and Yuan Qing. They retreated repeatedly, increasing the distance between them. The blade qi on the ladder's body was too frightening. Even if it was released unintentionally, it was still not something they could endure. No matter how a lion tried to disguise itself, it was still a lion after all. Its aura and innate power could not be concealed. Lung Fifan was undoubtedly a lion. Interesting. I can't believe I met a blade artist who has developed his cell will to such a level. Yi Chen sized up Lung Fifan. The reason why the latter's blade qi was so frightening was because his cell will was extraordinarily powerful. Each of his cells contained a frightening blade intent. This meant that the latter's power control had already reached a higher level, far surpassing Dugaju. While Yi Chen was sizing up Lung Fifan was also sizing him up. Their gazes collided. Swish! Blinding electric sparks exploded in the air, which was a sign that the will of a gaze was affecting the environment. Shit, retreat now. The crowd felt like their souls were struck by lightning, causing them to retreat even further. They did not expect Yi Chen to be such a terrifying presence. They could not withstand the confrontation between the two. Lung Fifan unleashed a saber aura, as if he was trying to test Yi Chen's strength. The saber aura tore the air apart, as if the heavens and earth were being split in half. Yi Chen let out a smile as the vague sword aura on his body was automatically activated. At the same time, the space suddenly stopped for a moment, but it was soon concealed again. Pop! A soft sound was heard, as the space between the two became empty. You're very strong. Lung Fifan left and headed toward the east gate. Dugaju, you'll be excited if you're here. He's a blade artist who's far ahead of you. Yi Chen headed toward the east gate as well. Not long after the two left, The place they were standing before suddenly shattered into pieces. Marks of saber and sword intertwined with one another, resulting in a shocking scene. Chapter 1039. In the afternoon, Fire City's auction began. As a large-scale auction that was held once every 3 years, the auction house was packed to the brim. Everyone present was a life and death king. Those below the life and death realm didn't even have the qualifications to enter. In a VIP room in the corner, Yichen sat on a soft bench that he had bought with 100 yuan stones. Taking a sip of the supreme-grade wine prepared by the auction house, Yichen thought to himself, Vermilion Bird Starfield has countless geniuses, 100 times more than Elysium. Apart from Vermilion Bird Starfield, there are still Azure Dragon Starfield, White Tiger Starfield, and Black Tortoise Starfield. That blade artist should be called Lung Fifen, ranked 7th on the Heavenly King list. He comes from White Tiger Starfield's giant blade star. Yichen had already heard of the Heavenly King list. It was indeed a monstrous ranking. The Firebird Starfield's graceful prince, who had a cultivation base of 5th layer life and death realm, was only ranked 94th. And Lung Fifen was ranked 7th, with a cultivation base of 4th layer life and death realm. He was a monster among monsters. Without a fight, I won't know whose battle strength is higher. Yichen was very clear that he was not invincible in this world. Plus, Lung Fifen's cultivation base was 1 level higher than his. Between geniuses, even the slightest bit of weakness would create an irrecoverable gap. Unlike ordinary people, Yichen saw an extremely frightening potential in Lung Fifen's body. This potential was like a demonic god. Once it exploded, it would definitely tear the sky and earth apart, frightening even ghosts and gods. This was also the reason why he did not dare to say that he could beat the latter for sure. On the wide auction stage, an old man in a red robe walked out. The old man's cultivation base was not weak, having reached the 3rd layer of life and death realm. Ladies and gentlemen, the Triennial Fire City auction has officially begun. Please don't make any noise, and don't leave your seats without permission. Maintain silence. The first item will now be auctioned. Without wasting any time, the red-robed elder had someone bring up the first auction item. The first auction item was a low-quality battle axe. Its entire body was crimson red, just like a soldering iron. The back of the axe was wide and flat, and the edge of the axe was as sharp as a knife. The main materials used to forge the battle axe were red copper and fire cloud stone essence. It naturally contained a powerful fire energy, and because of the size of the battle axe, it could be used for both defense and offense. The starting price was 100 source stones, and each increment must be no less than 10 source stones. In the end, this battle axe was bought by a life and death realm warrior for 260 yuan stones. The second item was a pair of extreme-grade armor boots. The main material of the boots was the flying feather iron. It was not a particularly precious extreme-grade metal, but with the addition of the flying feather iron, it was as light as a feather. When worn on the body, it did not take up any weight at all. Moreover, once Zhen Yuan was poured into it, it would activate the flying feather iron's power, doubling the speed. It was very popular. Not long after, this pair of metal boots containing flying feather iron was auctioned off for 300 primordial stones. The third item was a jade letter containing a secret martial art. The starting price was 200 yuan stones, and it was sold for 500 yuan stones, landing in the hands of a short elder. The fourth item was also a weapon, an extreme-grade mid-grade spear. The starting price was 300 yuan stones, and each increment must be no less than 10. It was bought by a life and death realm warrior, who specialized in using spears for 570 yuan stones. The following items all ended up with a very high price. The highest one was a full set of extreme-grade armor, which reached a shocking 2,200 yuan stones. The ninth item was a Heavenly King-grade treasure pill, the Dao pattern pellet. This pellet could increase the chances of breaking through to the next realm. From the first layer to the second layer, it could increase the chances by 100%. From the second layer to the third layer, it could increase the chances by 90%. From the third layer to the fourth layer, it could increase the chances by 50%. and from the 4th layer to the 5th layer, it could increase the chances by 10%. As soon as the pellet was brought out, the whole place was shocked, and the bidding voices rose one after another. 3,000 yuan stones. 3,200 yuan stones. 3,500 yuan stones. 4,000 yuan stones. Within a couple of breaths, the price of the pellet had increased to 4,000 yuan stones, which was already the price of a small king-level battleship. There is such a pellet. It was Yi Chen's first time hearing about a pellet that could increase the chances of reaching the next realm. If he could get his hands on this pellet, he might not have 100% chance of reaching the 4th level, but he would have at least 80 to 90% chance. After all, from the 3rd level to the 4th level, it would increase the chances by 50%, which was not something to be trifled with. However, Yi Chen also believed in one thing: pellets were only external objects. They might be able to help you for a while, but not forever. If he guessed correctly, using the pellet to increase one's cultivation would indeed make one happy for a while, but it would definitely lead to the instability of the martial arts foundation. If one wanted to reach the next realm, the difficulty would be doubled, or even several times higher. Only those life and death realm warriors who had exhausted their potential would be interested in the pellet, because without it, they might need hundreds or even thousands of years to reach the next realm. If they continued to reach the next realm, they might not be able to do it in their entire life. In that case, it would be better to use the pellet to increase their cultivation first. The pellet is a good thing, but unfortunately, we geniuses never use it. In another VIP room, Luo Yingkong said. Yuan Qing nodded. In the end, the pellet was bought by a gray-haired elder for 5,500 yuan stones. The atmosphere of the auction reached a climax, and the heated discussions continued without end. The 10th item is a Heavenly King Realm Great Blade, the Time Blade. The main material of the blade is the Time Stone. A fingernail-sized Time Stone is worth 100 yuan stones. This Time Blade has the size of half a fist. Now let the bidding begin. The starting price of the Time Blade is 6,000 yuan stones. Each increment must be no less than 100 yuan stones. Even Heavenly King Realm weapons had different grades. A normal Heavenly King Realm weapon would only be worth 3 to 5,000 yuan stones. But a good Heavenly King Realm weapon could go as high as 10,000 yuan stones. The main material of the Time Blade was the Time Stone, which was even more powerful. It was said that once a normal person touched the Time Stone, they would immediately age, and after forging the blade, they would become even scarier. 7,000 yuan stones. 8,000. 9,000. 10,000. There were a lot of King Realm blade artists on the scene, and the price of the Time Blade instantly broke through to 10,000. 15,000. Suddenly, an emotionless cold voice was heard. It's the lifeless bladesman, Lung Fifan. So he is here for the Time Blade. However, he is in the giant blade star of the White Tiger Star area, which is countless light years away from the Firebird Star. How could he know that there is a Time Blade here? That's simple. Recently, he must have something to do in the Vermilion Bird Star area. Then somehow, he found out that the Time Blade will be auctioned in the Flamehaven City. That's right. These monster-level geniuses are mysterious and unfathomable. They like to wander around. Lung Fifan's participation caused a short silence in the auction house. The lifeless bladesman was too famous. They had to consider whether they would offend him or not, and whether it was worth it to offend the lifeless bladesman for a Time Blade. There were too many things to consider. 18,000 primal stones. Right at this moment, another young voice was heard. It was from the 3rd VIP room. Hey, it's young Master Tsang Yu. When did he come back? He disappeared for almost 10 years. Someone recognized the voice. Young Master Tsang Yu was ranked 3rd among the top 10 talents of the Firebird Star. However, that was 9 years ago. Ever since young Master Tsang Yu had been defeated by Lan Xian'er, there had been no news of him. Some people said that he had left the Vermilion Bird Star area to train in other places. Others said that he had found a secret realm and was cultivating there. Young Master Tsang Yu was the #1 blade artist among the younger generation of the Firebird Star area. His return had caught many people off guard, and made them give up on competing for the time blade. The lifeless bladesman was not to be trifled with. Young Master Song Yu was not to be trifled with either. 20,000. Lung Fifan continued to bid. 22,000. Young Master Song Yu didn't flinch. 30,000. Lung Fifan didn't want to waste any more time. He immediately raised the price by 8,000 yuan stones. This price had already far exceeded the time blade's original value. Under normal circumstances, 20,000 yuan stones was the highest price it could go for. Beyond that, one could easily buy a better Heavenly King grade blade. Haha, the lifeless bladesman is indeed generous. Young Master Song Yu will not compete with you. However, after the auction, I will have a good fight with you. I want to see if your lifeless bladesman's blade skills are truly lifeless and invincible. Young Master Song Yu's laughter echoed through the entire auction house. What? Young Master Song Yu wants to challenge the lifeless bladesman, Lung Fifan? Isn't that too reckless? Perhaps young Master Song Yu is confident that he won't die. It looks like after disappearing for 9 years, young Master Song Yu plans to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. No one had any confidence in young Master Song Yu. No matter how much he had improved, it was impossible for him to defeat Lung Fifan. However, if he could make one move, it would be enough to make him famous. The auction items were presented one after another. Soon, it was time for the 20th item, which was also the finale of the auction. The 20th item is a small Heavenly King grade battleship. The starting price is 100,000 yuan stones. Each increment must be no less than 1,000 yuan stones. The bidding starts now. The puppet battleship was very important. It might not be able to increase one's battle strength, and it might not be able to protect oneself, but without it, one would not be able to travel further. In the starry sky, the distance was measured in light years. If one relied on one's own Jin Yuan to travel, one could only travel half a light year in 1 year, which was almost negligible. However, with the puppet battleship, one could easily travel thousands of light years, or even tens of thousands of light years, without any effort. The price kept rising, and soon reached 150,000, 160,000. Yi Chen's voice came out of the VIP room. It's him. Luo Yingkong and Yuan Qing looked in that direction. Lung Fifan, who was stroking the time blade, couldn't help but raise his head. Chapter 1040. Whether it was Luo Yingkong, Yuan Qing, or Lung Fifan, Yi Chen was a mysterious person, a mysterious sword artist. No one knew where he came from, and no one knew his identity. Luo Yingkong Yuanqing was fine, but Lung Fifan was ranked 7th on the Sky King list. Apart from a few extremely mysterious geniuses, he had seen or heard of most of them. However, none of them could be connected to Yi Chen. Clearly, Yi Chen was most likely not a genius of the Heavenly King list. However, Lung Fifan was sure that most of the geniuses on the Sky King list would be instantly killed if they ran into Yi Chen. This was an instinctive feeling that could not be doubted. 170,000. The bidder was an apathetic yellow-robed old man. His eyes were half closed, as if he was not fully awake yet hiding an ominous glint. It's the Jingji King. He's also participating in this auction. The Jingji King was a famous king on the Firebird planet. His cultivation base was at the peak of the 5th layer of life and death realm. With his Jingji demon art, he rarely met his match. In the past countless years, the number of life and death kings who had died in his hands was uncountable. These life and death kings all died miserably, exploding from the inside out, without a single drop of blood remaining. How unlucky! I originally wanted to bid for this small Sky King grade battleship. A chubby middle-aged king stood up. His expression changed several times, but in the end, he had no choice but to sit down dejectedly. Compared to the small Sky King grade battleship, his life was more important. The Jingji King was not a good person. He was a temperamental person who could not be judged with common sense. The appearance of the Jingji King caused the auction to fall into an awkward silence. The auctioneer smiled bitterly. It seemed that this small Sky King grade battleship would most likely fall into the hands of the Jingji King. Although he was unwilling, he had no other choice. Fortunately, the price had already reached 170,000, which was more or less a small profit. 180,000. In the corner of the VIP room, Yi Chen's voice came out indifferently. What boldness! He dares to go against the Jingji king. Many people looked at the VIP room where Yi Chen was, their eyes filled with admiration, as well as undetectable pity. 180,000. Good, another bid. Is there anyone who wants to continue? The auctioneer's face lit up. As long as someone increased the bid, the final price of this small Heavenly King stage battleship would definitely not be low. As for whether or not Yi Chen would attract trouble because of this, that was not something he cared about. The duty of the auction house was to ensure that every single item sold for a good price. Nothing else mattered. 190,000. At the same time, he indifferently glanced at Yi Chen, who was sitting in the corner of the room through the transparent glass. His eyes were completely open at this moment, and they were ashen white. Anyone who saw them couldn't help but feel a chill in their heart. However, Yi Chen didn't seem to notice that Jingji King was looking at him, and immediately called out the price of 200,000. Young people have too big of an appetite. It's not a good thing. I'll leave this small Heavenly King worship with you for now. Jingji monarch took a deep look at Yi Chen, closed his eyes and stopped bidding. So courageous, snatching the small Heavenly King worship from the Jingji monarch. Some people shook their heads inwardly. He's still too young, and doesn't know when to stop. So what if he can win the small Heavenly King worship? Offending the Jingji monarch, he's destined to lose everything, and even his life. The pugilistic world is not that easy to survive in. No one spoke again. The auctioneer said excitedly, 200,000 going once, 200,000 going twice, 200,000 going thrice. Sold. This small Heavenly King worship now belongs to VIP room 48. Congratulations. At this point, the Fire City auction had come to a successful conclusion. However, many people knew that this was just the beginning. Before, young Master Song Yu had said that he wanted to challenge lifeless bladesman Lung Fifan, and now, Yi Chen had offended the Jingji monarch. These two matters, no matter which one it was, were enough to pique their interest and curiosity. After paying 200,000 yuan stones, Yi Chen received 100 meters long light gold Heavenly King worship. Putting it in his supreme grade storage ring, Yi Chen turned and left the auction house. In the wilderness outside the east gate of Fire City, a huge crowd was gathered. Everyone was watching Lung Fifan and young Master Song Yu in the sky. On a huge withered tree in the wilderness, Yi Chen lightly landed. The Jingji monarch didn't seem to have any intention of finding trouble with him. He was also watching Lung Fifan and young Master Song Yu in the sky. He didn't care about young Master Song Yu. Lifeless bladesman Lung Fifan was not a kind person. Even he, the Jingji monarch, had to treat him with caution. Geniuses were always envied. Even if you had thousands, or even tens of thousands of years of accumulation, you might not be able to compare to dozens of years of effort. The universe was an era of great geniuses. Lung Fifan, perhaps you think that I, young Master Song Yu, am overestimating myself. But soon, I'll let you know that I, young Master Song Yu, am no longer the young Master Song Yu from 9 years ago. The current me, even if I can't threaten you, can't be underestimated. Young Master Song Yu's expression turned solemn. Strands of light black saber chi emitted from his body. Such a fierce saber chi. Many experts squinted their eyes. The light black saber chi on young Master Song Yu's body was not simple. It was not an ordinary saber chi. Make your move. I'll give you one chance. Lung Fifan had no intention of drawing his saber. Okay, then I won't hold back. Young Master Song Yu had never thought of defeating Lung Fifan. It was impossible. Lung Fifan was ranked 7th on the Sky King list. Even young Master Jinghong was far behind him. Young Master Song Yu did not dare to say that he could defeat young Master Jinghong, let alone Lung Fifan, who was ranked 80 places higher than young Master Jinghong. He wanted to test how much he had improved in the past 9 years. He wanted to know how strong he was. He wanted to know if he could survive one attack from Lung Fifan. If he could survive this attack, it would be a great boost to his saber Dao. Roar! Unexpectedly, young Master Song Yu did not draw his saber. He leaned back and tightened his muscles. The next moment, he was like a bow that had been stretched to its limit. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. An ear-piercing sound was heard. A bright black saber chi shot out from young Master Song Yu's chest. As soon as the saber chi appeared, it gave everyone a great sense of danger. It was as if the saber chi was something terrifying. Saber chi in his body? Yi Chen was surprised. The black saber chi was not a normal saber chi. It was the saber chi that young Master Song Yu had hidden in his body. This saber chi was not condensed from true essence. Instead, it was gathered from an extremely ominous aura and refined with his saber Dao will. No one knew that the reason why young Master Song Yu had disappeared for 9 years was to look for ominous lands and absorb the ominous aura there. All of this was because of a saber Dao secret technique called the ominous saber chi. The ominous saber chi was a saber Dao secret technique created by the ominous saber emperor hundreds of thousands of years ago. This saber Dao secret technique required one to absorb a large amount of ominous chi, then use a secret technique to refine it into saber chi. Finally, it would be compatible with one's own saber Dao will, and one could only succeed after countless tempering. The ominous saber chi was divided into 3 layers. The first layer was black saber chi, the second was purple saber chi, and the third was multicolored saber chi. At the first layer, the ominous saber chi possessed enormous might. At the second layer, it could instantly kill most kings under the 7th layer. At the third layer, it could even contend against 8th layer life and death monarchs. After all, the ominous saber emperor himself was an 8th layer life and death monarch. Once the ominous saber chi was cultivated, a strand of saber chi would appear in the middle dantian of the body. This strand of saber chi would not go out of control after being shot out. It was extremely intelligent, similar to the defensive blade art. However, compared to the latter, the ominous saber chi was countless times more powerful. Relying on the ominous saber chi, young Master Song Yu dared to challenge lifeless bladesman Lung Fifan. Go! Under young Master Song Yu's control, the ominous saber chi streaked across the sky and slashed toward Lung Fifan. Not the righteous path. Lung Fifan stretched out his left hand and grabbed the ominous saber chi, as if he was grabbing the sun and moon. Saber Dao is as vast as the ocean. Who can say who is righteous and who is devious? Scatter! Young Master Song Yu's expression remained unchanged as he spread open his right hand. Swish! Sensing each other's chi, the ominous saber chi suddenly dispersed like a black mist, breaking away from Lung Fifan's control. It then condensed once again and slashed toward Lung Fifan from the other side. The ominous saber chi could condense and disperse at will, equivalent to a treasured saber in the form of energy. However, no matter how powerful the ominous saber chi was, it couldn't break through Lung Fifan's defense. His feet slightly shifted, and his left hand once again grabbed the ominous saber chi. Almost no one could see how he moved. Scatter again! Young Master Song Yu roared. Clang! An astonishing scene occurred. This time, the ominous saber chi unexpectedly failed to disperse. Like a poisonous snake that had its weak spot grabbed, it continuously trembled and struggled. Impossible! Young Master Song Yu cried out involuntarily. As expected, his control over power has already reached a higher level. He has entered an unfathomable realm. Yi Chen's eyes were very sharp. Each of Lung Fifan's 5 fingers on his left hand emitted a different power. 5 fingers represented 5 different kinds of power. The 5 kinds of power acted on the ominous saber chi, making it difficult for the ominous saber chi to disperse. These 5 fingers could even easily grab a spiritual body without a physical body. It was like the Buddha's 5-finger mountain. Take a saber strike of mine. Grabbing the ominous saber chi with his left hand, Lung Fifan's right hand turned into a palm saber. He swung his palm saber at young Master Song Yu from a distance. Puff! Young Master Song Yu didn't even have time to react. His body was split in 2. Because he was wearing a top-grade artifact armor, his body didn't scatter even though it was split in 2. However, it wasn't over yet. Suddenly, millions of tiny saber chi burst out from the 2 halves of young Master Song Yu's body. The saber chi wreaked havoc and shattered young Master Song Yu into nothingness. Young Master Tsongyu didn't even have time to draw his saber. Even a palm saber strike from Lung Fifan wasn't something that young Master Tsongyu could withstand. This was the peerless bladesman ranked 7th on the Heaven King list. The spectators all took a cold breath and felt their bodies go cold. Chapter 1041. One blade with two stacks. Lifeless blade artist Lung Fifan truly lives up to his reputation. Silent Shock King's eyes narrowed into slits, revealing a dense apprehension in his eyes. Instant release of two stacks. Yi Chen also saw through the mysteries of Lung Fifan's blade palm. There were some secret arts or martial arts that would allow one's attack to contain multiple stacks, such as 2 stacks, 3 stacks, and 4 stacks. The more stacks, the more powerful the attack would be. However, strictly speaking, these could only be considered as ordinary multiple stacks, and the increase in strength was not too exaggerated. High-level multiple stacks combined multiple stacks, and with each additional stacks, the destructive power would increase by several folds. Lung Fifan's blade palm contained 2 stacks of stacks. Taking advantage of the instability of 2 stacks of stacks, he not only split open young Master Tsongyu's body, but also shattered it into nothingness. Multiple stacks were precisely the weapon that countered the undying body. It could easily make the opponent lose all blood, making it difficult for them to revive. It was like a super bomb. Haha, lifeless blade artist Lung Fifan's power, I, young Master Tsongyu, have finally witnessed it. I'm far from being your opponent, but the next time we meet, I'll definitely impress you. Although young Master Tsongyu's body was shattered into nothingness by countless tiny blade chi, there was still a fingernail-sized red ball that was not shattered. When the red ball shattered, a dense blood chi pervaded the air. In the next moment, young Master Tsongyu's body reformed. Apart from his slightly pale face, there was not the slightest injury. Blood-amplifying bead, no wonder you dared to challenge me. Lung Fifan said indifferently. It's the blood-amplifying bead. This is a priceless treasure. Hearing Lung Fifan's words, many people reacted. The blood-amplifying bead was an extremely precious treasure. It had no other function, and its only function was to give the user an extra life. As long as one refined the blood-amplifying bead into one's body and stored a certain amount of flesh and blood inside, one would not be afraid of being shattered by the enemy. This was because only 7th-layer life and death realm geniuses had the ability to shatter the blood-amplifying bead. Below 7th-layer life and death realm, no matter how peerless one's battle strength was, it was impossible. As for hiding a strand of flesh somewhere else, such as inside a storage ring, it would not work. As long as it was separated from the body, there would be no way for it to be reborn after the death of the body. It was the law of the universe. Otherwise, if a strand of his blood was scattered everywhere, he would never be killed again. Under normal circumstances, the price of a single blood-diffusing pearl was at least 10,000 origin stones. Moreover, there was no market for it. Once it appeared, it would immediately be fought over. In other words, young Master Tsongyu had lost over 10,000 origin stones in order to challenge Lung Fifan. However, this also reflected his courage. That's right. If I didn't have the blood-amplifying pearl, I, young Master Tsongyu, would indeed not dare to challenge you. Young Master Tsongyu admitted frankly. Then he added, of course you still have the chance to kill me now. Don't worry, I said I would give you a chance. Since you didn't die, I won't kill you again unless you want to die. Lung Fifan lowered his eyes and said indifferently, haha, thanks a lot. A faint smile appeared on young Master Tsongyu's face. However, he still felt some lingering fear in his heart. Instantaneous release of multiple stacks was not something everyone could do even on the Heavenly King ranking. Evidently, Lung Fifan's realm was not just limited to 2 stacks. If not for the blood-diffusing pearl, the latter could have killed him several times in an instant. Lung Fifan did not leave. Instead, his gaze fell on Yi Chen. Although Solitary Shock King's strength is not comparable to anyone on the Heavenly King ranking, if I want to defeat him, I'll have to reveal some of my trump cards. Let me see what kind of trump cards you have. Standing in the sky, Lung Fifan's long hair fluttered like blades. As the battle between Lung Fifan and young Master Tsongyu came to an end, Everyone's gazes were focused on Yi Chun and Solitary Shock King. Solitary Shock King's cultivation base is at the peak of 5th layer of life and death realm. This is a huge advantage. Adding on the Solitary Shock demonic art, this youngster is going to suffer a bit. With so many people here, Solitary Shock King won't be able to kill him. Who knows if this youngster has a powerful background? But he'll definitely be taught a lesson. That's not necessarily true. This youngster clearly knows that Solitary Shock King is at the peak of 5th layer of life and death realm. Yet he doesn't leave. He must have some confidence in escaping unscathed. The chances are slim. The reason why he doesn't leave might be because he knows that he can't escape from Solitary Shock King. That's true. Everyone was discussing spiritedly. Luo Yingkong and Yuan Qing heard everyone's words and couldn't help but sneer inwardly. Does he need to run? I'm afraid the one running away is Solitary Shock King. You'll see in a bit that this is a powerful sword artist, whose strength is on par with lifeless blade artist Lung Fifan. Solitary Shock King is courting death by provoking him. Outside the East Gate, the terrifying scene of Lung Fifan and Yi Chen's confrontation was still vivid in everyone's eyes. Those crisscrossing blade scars and sword scars were proof of Yi Chen's mysterious strength. Youngster, you still have a chance. Hand over that small Heavenly King grade battleship, and I won't pursue your offense. Solitary Shock King squinted his eyes and said coldly. Yi Chen smiled. It's in my hands. If you want it, you can name a price. If I'm satisfied with the price, I might let you have it. Name a price. Sorry, Solitary Shock King, will never make a deal with a weakling. Solitary Shock King shook his head. Make your move. You will give up. A gust of wind blew past. Yi Chen's clothes fluttered in the wind as he stood on the dead tree. Solitary Demon Hibernation. Solitary Shock King didn't waste time. He leaped into the air and threw out a palm attack towards Yi Chen. All of a sudden, a terrifying black smoke gushed out like 100 ghosts marching in the night. Puff! The black smoke shrouded Yi Chen and the dead tree below him. The dead tree was instantly dyed black, as if it was made of black metal. However, this black dead tree exploded into countless tiny black pieces. These tiny black pieces continued to explode, creating a chain of explosions. The Solitary Demon Hibernation art exploded from the inside out. Its destructive power was shocking. Where is he? Did he die just like that? Not even his bones are left. Everyone was shocked to find that Yi Chen had disappeared without a trace. No one knew if he was dead or had escaped with some kind of shocking method. What a domineering demonic art. Amazing. Suddenly, Yi Chen's voice came out from the remaining black smoke. Everyone looked towards the source of the voice and felt their scalps go numb. Yi Chen's figure was even more ghostly than a ghost. He was swaying left and right, and no one could catch him. Because he was so fast, he left countless overlapping afterimages, causing the black smoke to seem like it had passed through his body. He saw through Solitary Shock King's ultimate move in an instant. He magnified the weakness and stayed in the dead end. Lung Fifan's pupil shrunk to a dot. It was easy to see through the moves, but it was 10 times harder to be in the dead end. The dead end, as the name suggested, was a corner that was absolutely impervious to attacks. It was like the ocean current. If an ordinary person entered it, they would only be able to go with the flow, unable to control themselves. However, an expert in water would be able to move like a fish in water. He would be able to take advantage of the situation and stay in the gaps between the ocean currents. Solitary Shock King's move was obviously many times more complicated than the ocean current. However, Yi Chen's ability to see through the flaws was also many times stronger than an ordinary person's. It was as if Solitary Shock King's move had no secrets in his eyes. Could this be the selfless Heavenly Eye realm? No, the selfless Heavenly Eye realm is in the state of selfless consciousness. With Solitary Shock King's strength, it's impossible for him to force him to use the selfless Heavenly Eye realm. Countless thoughts flashed through Lung Fifan's mind. As a person who stood at the peak of the younger generation, he had seen many abilities that ordinary people couldn't see. He had used the abilities of most of the geniuses on the Heavenly King ranking. But after some comparison, there seemed to be some slight differences. I'm looking forward to the battle in the trial field of God. Lung Fifan slowly exhaled and thought to himself. When did such a powerful sword artist come to the Firebird Star? I seem to have missed many things in the 9 years I was away. Young Master Tsung Yu frowned. In the Firebird Star, the only sword artists he was wary of were young Master Jinghong and Lan Xian. Right now, he was confident that he could defeat Lan Xian. But young Master Jinghong still wasn't confident. He didn't expect another mysterious sword artist to appear. How dare you ignore my solitary shock devil art? You are courting death. Solitary Shock King was enraged. He turned into a black devil lightning and swept towards Yi Chun. Since his opponent's movement skill and eyesight were powerful, he would use close combat to defeat his opponent. With the obstruction of the atmosphere, Solitary Shock King's instantaneous burst of speed could only reach over 2,000 times his original speed. In such a short distance, he couldn't increase his speed to his limit, but it was enough. In a flash, Solitary Shock King arrived in front of Yi Chun. He raised his right hand and chopped towards Yi Chun's head. Just as Yi Chun was about to be chopped by the palm, suddenly, a powerful sword aura burst out from Yi Chun's body. This sword aura disappeared in a flash, and Solitary Shock King's body was frozen for a moment. Chi! A sword light flashed and Solitary Shock King's head flew up. I won't kill you this time. Yi Chun didn't plan to kill Solitary Shock King in front of so many people. He had just arrived here, and didn't want to stir up too much trouble. After all, there were some people on Fiery Bird Star who could kill him. For example, the City Lord of Fiery Fire City, Mystic Emperor Fiery Fire, could kill him 100 times over. Who knew if there was a powerful figure behind Solitary Shock King? Hiss! Gasps resounded one after another. Nobody knew why Solitary Shock King paused for a moment. It seemed to have something to do with that sword aura. Although they couldn't see through it, it didn't hinder them from understanding Yi Chun's strength. After all, Solitary Shock King was a 5th layer life and death expert, while Yi Chun was only 3rd layer life and death expert. Skipping 2 layers and insta-killing Solitary Shock King was too exaggerated. Interesting, he is one of us. Lung Fifan's face revealed an undetectable smile. With a swoosh, he turned around and left. His speed grew faster and faster, until he disappeared into the horizon. It seems like I'm still far from being strong enough. Young Master Tsung Yu also left. He had to make preparations for the upcoming battle in the Divine Trial Field. At that time, it would be the time for the Starry Sky geniuses to shine. After reconnecting his head, Solitary Shock King knew that he had bitten off more than he could chew. He didn't say anything and quickly left the place, cutting a sorry figure. Chapter 1042. It had already been a month since the auction had ended. During this month, Yi Chun's story had spread out in the Firebird planet. Everyone was guessing which life star this young man had come from. They did not think that Yi Chun was from the Firebird planet. Otherwise, how could they not have heard of such a genius in all these years? However, ever since that day, Yi Chun had suddenly disappeared without a trace, just like how he had suddenly appeared in everyone's sight. Elysium, the king-grade forbidden place, the desolate mountain. I did not expect that a super earthquake would happen in the desolate mountain, and the whole mountain had sunk in. It should be dozens of miles deep. But the desolate chi down there is so rich. There must be some desolate stones. Although it had been almost 2 years since the disaster of the foreign races had ended, no one had relaxed. They were very clear that if their own power was not enough, and the overall power of Elysium was not enough, it would still be invaded by the demons and the evil spirit race. Only by continuously increasing their own power could they protect Elysium and the billions of creatures in Elysium. And the key to the desolate star, the desolate stone, was without a doubt the easiest thing for them to increase their power. Right then, there were a lot of life and death realm warriors in the desolate mountain looking for the desolate stone. They did not immediately go down to explore, but instead left the desolate mountain and spread the news to the others. The disaster of the foreign races had made them extremely united, throwing away their old grudges and selfishness. 1 week later, haha, I got a desolate stone. I got one too. So many desolate stones. There is no need to worry about not having enough. Everyone can get one. The number of desolate stones under the desolate mountain was beyond everyone's imagination. Finally found the desolate stone. Morong Qingqing was holding a complete desolate stone in her hand, a smile appearing on her face. Not far away, Su Jing was also holding a piece. Shoo! Shoo! Two figures flashed past. Dugu Ju and Snow Sword of Gojoseon landed on a strange rock, each holding a desolate stone. Obtaining the desolate stone meant that they were one step closer to Yi Chun. One day, they would enter the universe and embark on their own journey. This was a weapon shop on Fire City's West Street. This weapon shop only had 3 floors, and compared to the other weapon shops on 4 or 5 floors, it was much smaller. The shop was also a bit shabby. The signboard was new, and there were 4 large golden words on it. Falling Dust Sword Pavilion. There was also a sword and a leaf symbol on the bottom right corner. There was a shopkeeper and dozens of employees in the shop. Shopkeeper, what kind of person do you think our owner is? Other weapon shops usually have low-grade weapons on the first floor, mid-grade weapons on the second floor, upper-grade weapons on the third floor, and only semi-extreme grade weapons on the fourth floor. Although our weapon shop is just a normal weapon shop with only 3 floors, we can't possibly have semi-extreme grade weapons on the first floor. One of the shop assistants on the first floor was puzzled. The shopkeeper explained, "Perhaps the owner is trying to attract customers." Attract customers? I don't think so. The shop assistant shook his head. Although my eyesight is not as good as yours, I can still tell that the half-step extreme grade swords on the first floor are not much better than the other half-step extreme grade swords. However, the price is 2 times, or even 3 times higher. I think the owner doesn't plan to sell these half-step extreme grade swords at all. The shopkeeper was an elder with a clean look. He touched his beard and said mysteriously, "You only see the surface, but not the essence. The semi-extreme grade swords on the first floor are 2 times, or even 3 times more than the others. But the pseudo-extreme grade swords on the second floor are 2 times more than the others. As for the extreme grade swords on the third floor, the owner only put them out, but did not mark the price. He said that he would not sell them for now. Although I do not know what the owner's goal is, I am sure he has his own plans." Listening to you, it does make sense. No wonder the owner would ask you to be the shopkeeper. This shop assistant was very impressed by the shopkeeper, but was also very curious about the owner. "All right, asking so much is not good for you. Go and clean the first floor again." As he said that, the shopkeeper let out a sigh. After so many days, there were quite a lot of customers, but not a single sword had been sold. To be honest, he could not figure out the owner's plan either. Right at that moment, 2 customers walked in. "Sir, please come in." The shopkeeper came to greet them personally. All the swords on the first floor are semi-extreme grade swords. Your weapon shop seems to be different from the others." One of the customers looked over and saw that the first floor was filled with colorful swords. With a rough look, there were hundreds of them. Although they were not out of their scabbards, they still gave off a cold and sharp feeling. The other customer nodded, but soon, he touched his chin and said, "Something is not right. The semi-extreme grade swords here are so expensive. They are at least 2 times more expensive than the others." "Shopkeeper, what is going on? Is this some random price?" The shopkeeper forced a smile. "Dear customers, this is the price that our owner has set. I don't know what his intention is, but I, Zhang Fingyi, can guarantee that these semi-extreme rank swords are all genuine." As for the second floor, there are also pseudo-extreme rank swords, and some of them are even better than the ones from other shops. "Oh really? Let's go and have a look." The 2 followed the shopkeeper to the second floor. The swords on the second floor were 70% less than the first floor, only about 70 to 80. Just as the shopkeeper had said, the second floor was full of pseudo-extreme grade swords. The moment they entered, they could feel the cold sword chi in their faces. Anyone below the Sea of Souls realm would not be able to handle it. Therefore, the most basic requirement for a shop assistant was Sea of Souls realm cultivation. The other pseudo-extreme grade swords are normal, but these dozens of pseudo-extreme grade swords are definitely top of the line. But the price seems to be twice as expensive, more than 100 yuan stones. Spending more than 100 yuan stones to buy a pseudo-extreme grade sword. I might as well spend a little bit more to buy a low extreme grade sword. Shopkeeper, who is your owner? Don't tell me he is making fun of customers? To be honest, the two were quite interested in these dozens of swords. The sword intent contained within them was actually attributed sword intent, which was extremely powerful. Its power was at least several times that of normal pseudo-extreme grade swords. However, they were too expensive, and not worth it at all. After all, a normal pseudo-extreme grade sword would only cost a dozen yuan stones, and a high-grade one would cost no more than 50 yuan stones. As for the top-grade ones, they would cost at most 8 to 10 yuan stones. The shopkeeper remembered the owner's words, telling him to bring the customers to the third floor no matter what. He smiled. It is indeed a bit expensive, but I think the price will be lowered in the future. You too, there are still some extreme grade swords on the third floor. Although they are not for sale, you too can go take a look. When they are sold in the future, you can buy them before others. Alright, I am convinced by your owner. Bring us to the third floor. I want to see how many extreme grade swords there are. The two had already given up on buying swords in this shop. If it were not for the fact that the extreme grade swords were too attractive, they would not even want to go to the third floor. There were only 5 extreme grade swords on the third floor. Cutting Star low extreme grade. Horizontal Flow low extreme grade. Blue Sea mid extreme grade. Crack Gold mid extreme grade. Cold Moon high extreme grade. Fuck. There are even high extreme grade swords here. The sword intent contained on them has actually reached the 6th step. The two were dumbfounded. Their cultivation bases were not low, being at the first layer of life and death realm. They happened to be lacking an extreme grade sword. After visiting so many weapon shops, most of them did not have any extreme grade swords. Occasionally, they would come across one, but the quality was ordinary. Therefore, they planned to get a pseudo-extreme grade sword for now, and then buy it when they came across an extreme grade sword that they liked. I'm comprehending Metal Profound and Wind Profound. These two metal attribute swords are suitable for me. The metal and water attribute Cold Moon is even better. I'm comprehending Water Profound and Wood Profound. Horizontal Flow and Blue Sea are also suitable for me. Cold Moon is indeed good, but with my wealth, I can't afford it even if I sell my entire family's fortune. Upon reaching life and death realm, one would usually train 2 profounds. As long as the weapon's attribute matched one of them, it would be fine. Of course, there were also people who, in order to match their own profounds, would spend a lot of money to hire peak extreme grade blacksmiths to forge weapons for them. These weapons were usually compound attributed weapons, which meant that they contain more than 2 attributes. Gentlemen, my boss said that every week or so, there will be a new supreme grade treasure sword here. When the number of supreme grade treasured swords reaches a certain number, he will start to sell them. The shopkeeper repeated his master's words. What a pity he's not selling now. Fine, I'll remember this weapon shop. Falling Dust Sword Pavilion, right? The two of them stared fixedly at the 5 top-grade treasured swords, wanting nothing more than to snatch them away. Naturally, this was only what they thought in their hearts. Any weapon shop would have countless formations and restrictions set up. Once these restrictions were activated, not only would they be trapped, they would also attract the attention of the city guards of Lifefire City. At that time, they wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. After a week, a blue-robed youngster walked out from the backyard of the weapon shop. Boss. Greetings, boss. The shopkeeper and the staff bowed toward Yi Chen. Thank you for your hard work. Yi Chen nodded and walked toward the 3rd floor. On the 3rd floor. Right now, my success rate of forging swords below the Heavenly King realm has reached 100%. In 3 months, I should be able to open for business. Taking out 2 extreme grade swords from his storage ring, Yi Chen hung them on the wall. If someone were here, they would definitely be shocked. 100% success rate. This was already a Heavenly King realm swordsmith. Only Heavenly King realm swordsmiths could achieve 100% success rate when forging swords below the Heavenly King realm. And, Which of those heavenly king realm swordsmiths hadn't lived for thousands, or even tens of thousands of years? However, in comparison, Yi Chen's speed was even more terrifying. A week ago, the shopkeeper had said that there would be one more extreme grade sword on the third floor every week. But this week, Yi Chen had actually taken out 2 extreme grade swords. This was simply unheard of, even for a heavenly king realm swordsmith. When forging swords below the heavenly king realm, it would take about a month to forge one. The slower ones might even take 2 months. If it was too fast, it would be easy to fail, or waste the quality of the materials. 2 swords a week. This speed was more than 8 times that of other heavenly king realm swordsmiths. Chapter 1043. The 2 newly forged swords were purple gold and blue gold. The purple gold one was called Purple Soul, a mid-supreme grade sword. The blue gold one was called Sky One, a high supreme grade sword. Purple Soul sword contained the metal attribute. Sky One sword contained the metal and water attribute, the same as Cold Moon sword. Strictly speaking, he was only a heavenly king grade swordsmith, in terms of metal and water attributes. If it were any other attribute, he wouldn't be able to guarantee 100% success rate. Of course, as his sword forging technique improved, although he hadn't started forging swords of other attributes yet, his success rate would also increase. Sword forging technique was the same. A row of 7 swords of different colors. Yi Chen nodded in satisfaction. He was currently in dire need of yuan stones, because of the small heavenly king grade battleship, and this weapon shop. The small heavenly king grade battleship's speed was 3 times that of a small king grade battleship, and its consumption of yuan stones was 10 times that of the former. If the distance was short, it would be fine. However, if the distance was like the journey from Elysium to Firebird Star, which was close to 1,000,000 light years, it would consume several thousand yuan stones. In the starry sky, there was an industry called the ride industry. The majority of life and death kings who couldn't afford a puppet battleship had no choice but to ride a puppet battleship. Under normal circumstances, riding a king-grade battleship for 10,000 light years would cost 10,000 supreme-grade spirit stones, which was equivalent to 1/5 of a yuan stone. Riding a heavenly king-grade battleship for 10,000 light years would cost 2 yuan stones. Although it didn't seem like much, it was a huge profit for this industry. After all, they couldn't just carry a single customer. A large battleship could carry 5,000 people. In this way, even a journey of 10,000 light years would yield a profit of 1,000 yuan stones, or 10,000 yuan stones. A journey of 100,000 light years would yield 10,000 yuan stones, or even 100,000 yuan stones. However, the battleship's consumption was less than 1% of that. Yi Chen had bought the small Heavenly King stage battleship for the sake of convenience, as it was impossible for him to carry people out. As such, he had to bear all the costs by himself. For every 1,000,000 light years, he would use up over 1,000 source stones. Ever since he had bought the small Heavenly King battleship, Yi Chen only had about 100,000 source stones left. Every time he used it, it would be less. In order to not have to worry about lacking source stones in the future, Yi Chen could only try his best to earn as many as he could in the early stages. As for this weapon shop, Yi Chen was renting it. Because the shop's business was not good, the previous owner rented it to Yi Chen for 3,000 yuan stones per year. Since life and death kings had a lifespan of 100,000 years, it was impossible to rent it for only 1 or 2 years. Either they didn't rent it at all, or they had to rent it for more than 50 years. Yi Chen had 150,000 yuan stones on him, so he rented it for 50 years. After renting the weapon shop, Yi Chen's wealth had almost been looted clean. Now, he could only rely on selling swords to earn primordial stones. It was not easy to run a weapon shop. For this reason, Yi Chen took a shortcut. He bought several hundred semi-extreme grade swords from the market and placed them on the first floor as a front. Moreover, he set the price very high, 2 or 3 times that of other weapon shops. This was because he had no intention of selling them in the first place. He only wanted to put on a front and leave a deep impression on the customers, making them remember Falling Flower Sword Pavilion. As for the pseudo-extreme grade swords on the second floor, most of them were bought. Only a dozen of them were forged by him, and their prices were also very high. His goal was the third floor. He was very clear that no matter how well the semi-extreme grade swords sold, they wouldn't be able to make much money. Moreover, he didn't have the time to forge semi-extreme grade swords. As far as he was concerned, only supreme grade swords could earn him a huge amount of yuan stones. However, a few supreme grade swords wouldn't last long, and wouldn't help him build up his reputation. Therefore, he thought of an idea. He wouldn't sell the supreme grade swords for now, but put them there for others to see, letting them know that there were a lot of supreme grade swords here, and each one of them was extraordinary. Moreover, he wouldn't sell them for the time being. When there were more of them, it would naturally cause a huge commotion. At that time, Falling Flower Sword Pavilion's reputation would be established. Even if Yi Chun raised the price very high, as long as it wasn't outrageous, there would still be people fighting to buy it. After all, not everyone was an extreme grade sword forger like Yi Chun, who was a life and death realm sword artist with the destruction and immortal sword intents. Without exaggeration, most of the extreme grade sword forgers were only at Sea of Souls realm, and couldn't compare to Yi Chun at all. However, the truly powerful sword artists didn't have much time to waste on forging swords. Of course, for other sword artists, forging swords might be a waste of time, but for Yi Chun, it was a time to strengthen his foundation. The speed at which a person digested knowledge was limited. Why were some people who had accumulated knowledge for thousands, or even tens of thousands of years, not able to compare to geniuses? It was because their speed of absorbing knowledge was far slower than geniuses. However, even geniuses couldn't be infallible and make use of all the useful knowledge. The process of Yi Chun forging swords was also the process of digesting knowledge. Those details that he had overlooked in the past, as well as the comprehension that he had missed, would slowly appear in Yi Chun's mind. Then, after thousands of refinements, they would become Yi Chun's foundation, his foundation. Not to mention anything else, ever since he had arrived at the Firebird Star and successfully forged 7 extreme grade swords, Yi Chun felt that his sword Dao realm had increased by a lot. Before, he had merely reached the initial stage of no sword in hand and no sword in heart. But now, he had already reached the middle stage of this realm. When he attacked, there wouldn't be any fluctuations in his mind. Moreover, because his mind was free of distracting thoughts, the speed of his attacks had become even faster and more focused. The improvement of Sword Dao realm was also a great help in exerting one's strength. Although Yi Chun had stepped into the palace of strength control very early on, and had advanced by leaps and bounds to a point where he couldn't even grasp his limits, no matter how good his strength control was, it still required the coordination of Sword Dao. This was because Yi Chun was first and foremost a sword artist. In other words, strength control was the foundation of the foundation, and Sword Dao was to use this foundation in the form of Sword Dao to display 100%, or even 200%. The higher one's Sword Dao realm was, the more one could display the advantage of strength control. In addition, Yi Chun found that forging swords could also train his sword intent. He had the destruction and immortal sword intents. During the battle with the Troll Emperor, the immortal sword intent had broken through to the 7th step, while the destruction sword intent had remained at the peak of the 6th step. Under normal circumstances, it would take at least a few years, or even dozens of years to upgrade the destruction sword intent to the 7th step. After all, the destruction sword intent was the strongest sword intent, which was much harder to upgrade than the ordinary sword intent. But now, he had a feeling that if he continued to forge more extreme grade swords, the destruction sword intent would reach the 7th step even faster. At that time, if the destruction sword intent and immortal sword intent were both at the 7th step, they would resonate, and both would advance rapidly. It should be known that the 7th step immortal sword intent already gave Yi Chun the sword intent protection ability. The 7th step destruction sword intent would definitely have a huge breakthrough in terms of offensive power. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.